Hey James, don't you think Islam is more logical than Christianity because Islam is simple and easy to understand?
Of course, obviously, I don't think that Islam is more logical than Christianity, but this is a really worthwhile thing to talk about because logic can only take us so far in a conversation. Now, I believe logic is a gift from God and it's objective, but our grasp on logic is not objective because logic is an exercise in philosophy, which means that what we're doing is taking things we know to be true and things we believe to be true, and then extrapolating those to make predictions and deductions about how we think the world is going to work. This is how the Greeks did science. So Aristotle wrote a book on physics where he took known phenomena and then extrapolated them to calculate what was going to happen. But ultimately, a lot of his ideas were disproved when people started observing the world around them. So one example, Aristotle believed that two objects of different sizes, the biggest object would fall fastest. But Galileo disproved this by observing that when a large object and a small object are dropped from the same height from the Tower of Pisa, they actually fall at the same speed. And this happens in lots of different fields in life, that we have logical assumptions about how something's going to work, and then it's disproved when we actually observe the reality. So even now, in the study of quantum physics, Einstein believed that nothing was faster than the speed of light. But recently, it's been demonstrated a phenomenon called quantum entanglement. And what that means is that two particles that have been entangled and separated by a long distance, if one of those particles is changed, then the other one changes immediately, which means faster than the speed of light. And the more we delve into quantum physics, the less it makes sense according to our previous model of how physics works, right? Now, that doesn't mean that quantum physics is illogical. It means that we don't quite grasp the logic of it from our current limited perspective of this. So likewise, with something like the Trinity in Christianity, I believe the Bible teaches that God exists eternally as one God in three persons, and those three people are separate from each other and all share the one being of God. Now, I don't believe it's illogical to believe that. I believe it's entirely rational and logical for me to believe that if human logic can't yet describe the way a particle works, the smallest thing in the universe, how much less can human logic accurately capture exactly how God himself functions? That doesn't mean the Trinity is illogical. It means nothing within the framework of our current logic can perfectly capture what that is yet, because we don't believe the Trinity and Christian doctrine because we've deduced it from logic. We believe it because we have observed it. So the disciples of Jesus, right, they met the Son of God. They heard the voice of the Father call him the Son from heaven, and they were indwelt with the Holy Spirit. So they were experientially Trinitarians. They interacted with these things and they observed these things about God, and that changed the whole framework of their logic. So if you're Muslim, you have a framework for your logic. You've been told your entire life that Tawheed is the way to understand God, and that Islam is the final revelation of God, and nothing other than complete, absolute Unitarian monotheism doesn't make any sense, and that's not the way God is. Because you believe that is a revelation, you make that the cornerstone of your logic. Which means, when you hear things about Christianity like the Trinity, or the death and resurrection of Jesus, and Jesus dying on behalf of people's sins, that sounds illogical because the things you presuppose in your logical framework don't make sense of those things. But to a Christian, those things make complete logical sense, even if we can't describe every aspect of that. Whereas if you talk to an atheist, they think you and I are both completely insane and completely illogical, and we would obviously disagree with them. So I think logic's not unimportant. Logic is a good thing, but it has limitations, and it's limited in being able to deduce what we can about God, unless we're using the things that God has already revealed to us himself. Now, someone might say, well, if you if you believe that you don't have to understand God logically, what's to stop somebody coming and saying, well, this tree here is God? But from a Christian framework perspective, God himself says he doesn't contradict himself. God himself is not a tree. He's stated that. So I, as a Christian, will not believe that God is a tree if someone tells me that. Because again, I'm not saying logic's not important. I'm just saying everybody has their own internal logical systems which make sense based on their experiences, beliefs, and worldview presuppositions. And it's very important for you to understand that the things you take as hard facts are largely presuppositions. Now, we can talk about, was Muhammad a prophet? Did Jesus claim to be God? Is the Bible corrupt? Is the Qur'an the final revelation of God? And those are good conversations to have, but these are not conversations about logic so much as they're conversations about, well, what actually happened? And whatever we find out actually happened, we have to believe that no matter where it takes us. Thanks for watching. If you have more questions, why not check out the other videos in this series? If we haven't answered your question yet, you can submit it to almeida.org/ask. We aim to answer one question every week. Like and subscribe for more content.